Hey everyone, and welcome. Good to see you all. It's Sarah Hicks, and thanks for joining me for the fifth episode of Backstage Pass, where I get to talk to my friends, musicians, artists, thinkers, and really get behind the scenes what happens off stage as a performer, what a musician's life is like, what their passions are, what makes them tick. And I'm really excited today to welcome my friend Joe Conyers, and we're here. Do I have you, Joe? We're waiting. It's a beautiful day here. Oh, yay!
Hello.
It's so good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
It's
Yeah,
been ages.
it has been a while, but not so long. I saw your interview with Eleni Uriosti, and it'd been a long time, but you've been with the Philadelphia Orchestra. It's been less than 10 years. You were with us like 4 or 5 years ago, right? For some, yeah,
For something,
yeah.
right? So not so long. Oh,
That's
it's
right.
a smiling face. Yay!
Likewise. Thanks for having me on your show.
Of course, I'm really excited. I'm going to give a brief bio, if you don't mind. It's a list.
Sure, that's fine.
All right. So Joe is the acting associate principal bass of the Philadelphia Orchestra. And he's been the assistant principal bass since 2010, 10 years. Amazing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, actually, my anniversary, I won the audition 10 years ago, June 1st.
No kidding. Oh, congrats.
Yeah. Hey.
You've been in the Atlanta Orchestra Grand Rapids Symphony. You've been a soloist with the Alabama Symphony Chamber Orchestra of Philly. You are a chamber musician. You're part of the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. You are an award-winning person. You got the 19th Sphinx Organization Medal of Excellence. You were one of Musical America's 30 Professionals of the Year. You teach at Temple University and Juilliard. You give master classes and lectures across the country. You are the founder and director of Project 440, and you're music director of Philly's All-City Orchestra. So
That is correct.
my question to you, how do you find time to deadlift 315 pounds? Question.
Well, first of all, I don't know if I can actually do that anymore. It's been a long time since I've been to the gym. It's very sad. So I'm already like trying to mentally get into the mode of working my way back up to where I was. But it's a lot. I do a lot. I'm really busy. I'm always on the go. I think I recently told someone last year, before all this everything went down, I was at the second highest tier of American Airlines. I was very proud, having flown over 50 flights just on American Airlines,
Wow.
not including other airlines. So I get around a lot, but I actually really enjoy it. It's neat to kind of build a career and build some time and then be able to share that with other people. That to me is actually really exciting. And actually fuels a lot of my work. So it's a give and take relationship.
Yeah. And we're going to talk a lot about that, but I sort of want to get back to the beginning because I want to know how you chose music, or did it choose you, and then why the bass?
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
So I always say music found me. I didn't find music because I feel like music has that way with people. I think probably the early music memory is from the church. Grew up in a traditional African-American Baptist church in Savannah, Georgia. That's home. That's where I grew up. And I heard music all the time. And my mom had a piano in the house, and her dream was to have all her kids play. I didn't know this, of course. I was four at the time, actually. And she said I would come home and actually start trying to play the hymns and songs from church on the piano. That's one. She said the other thing is when the washer was going and would start get rhythmic, I would actually start dancing to the beat of it. She's like, okay, this kid might have promise. So I started with piano lessons when I was 5. And then as I got older, seeing my brother and sister play their instruments all the time with friends, and I was always practicing by myself on piano, I just wanted to play with people. So the strings teacher at the school, very smart woman, she saw that I played piano, had a musical family with strings, and she needed a bass player. And I thought, well, bass is neat enough. I like kind of standing out in that way a little bit. So little did I know what I was signing up for. But but the rest is history. I started playing bass when I was 11 years old. And it did really take off because after 2 or 3 years, my level was probably competitive with being on piano. And
Okay.
and then, because for a long time I thought I was going to be a pianist. I mean, I played musicals at my high school growing up. And middle school. I played Sound of Music, the entire score on piano of Sound of Music in 8th grade.
Oh, wow.
And it was so much fun. I loved it. I loved it. I did Sound of Music, South Pacific. What's that? I'm back. We're good?
Oh, just lost for a sec, but you're back. You're back.
Okay, back. Okay, good. So, yeah, so Sound of Music, South Pacific, Once Upon a Mattress. I think those are the 3 shows I played on piano when I was in school. And it was great. Wow. It was just so much fun. And I think that's where the bass actually kind of fits. Because I've always loved allowing an artist do what they want to do. So as a pianist, I mean, of course I am my own artist, but if they want to take time or whatever, I love being able to do that with an artist and do it really musically so they just feel like they're floating on a cloud. And that's always been a part of my nature. And so as a bass player, it actually kind of works because that's how we support in the orchestra. I mean, we aren't seen as necessarily the heroes of every show. But of course, without the bass section, a lot could go wrong.
Yeah, from a practical standpoint, definitely. But from a musical standpoint too, I mean, the bass really provides the foundation of all sound, and without it, nothing resonates above it, right?
Right. And yeah, and it's just neat, kind of leading the band in that way. So I've enjoyed my time on the double bass. It's been a great adventure, despite all the stares I get when I'm in public, and all the bass players can attest to this, and everyone asks you, don't you ever wish you played the piccolo?
Right.
Like the first time I've ever heard it. So, but you get over those things, and it's a great instrument.
So we talked about bass in the orchestra and how you sort of lead from the bottom, but you also play chamber music and you're soloist. So do you approach playing your instrument differently when you're under those different circumstances, or is it just music, or how do you sort of mentally approach that?
Sure. So chamber music is the same. It's just more nuanced because I hear my voice. That's the great thing about chamber music. It actually makes me feel like the days I play piano in a company, although I don't, or collaborated. I don't want to offend any pianists. When I collaborated with, when I would collaborate with different artists. But in chamber music, being able to completely shape that line on the bottom and every nuance, because then once you do that, actually, I love the fact it inspires everyone else around, and we have a lot of power as bass players to be able to do that. And so in the orchestra, that kind of nuance doesn't exist. It just exists kind of practically as the ensemble. Chamber music is that nuance, and that game is that interplay, really being able to adjust on the fly at all times. And then solo is a completely different thing.
Right.
It's completely different, and to be honest, it still kind of not drives me nuts, but terrifies me in a little way, because I don't know. That's what I'm least used to, being in front, and so now I'm that voice that's leading. Right. But then there's an orchestra behind me, and then there's a conductor, and so it's like, am I supposed to be watching them more, or like that part is very strange, but. I have enjoyed playing the solos I've gotten to play. I played a myriad of bass concerti with different orchestras, and each one is a different experience. I just played my first 10 done bass concerto back in August, and fingers crossed I'll be doing it again with the Hilton Head Symphony in that's March of next year. The 10 done bass concerto, and that's a lot of fun. John B. Hedges, you know John B.
Of course, yeah, John B.
Yeah. He wrote a concerto for me, and I played.
Right.
And I played that with Grand Rapids and Savannah and Jackson, right? Yeah, Jackson and Richmond Symphony. It just aired on Virginia Public Radio, so it was really neat to hear it again in that context of radio. But it's a different experience playing as soloist. It's very, very. It's just very different. You get used to being always in the background, and I'm saying like, surprise! Like, it's just,
here you are.
That's right.
So I always think of playing in an orchestra, you're playing in your section.
Yeah.
The section plays within a larger ensemble, the strings, and that's within the context of a larger orchestra. And I always think of it as a big organism that needs to somehow move together. So,
Right.
like, what's your awareness as a bass player at the bottom of all of this, of the movement of the larger organism? I can't think of a better word because it's so many parts that have to work together to create one thing, right? So what's that feeling like?
It is very organic. Well, I will say, I mean, being in the bass section, like I feel like the bottom or the rhythm section, that's where the basses always are, like in a jazz ensemble or in a bluegrass band. We really do kind of lead the way. Mm-hmm. And what I get most excited about is in playing in a bass section, or at least I can speak for like a Philadelphia Orchestra bass section, mm-hmm. And after 10 years there, we really do lead the way. So, because if we aren't immediate, I mean, we're already so far back. We have so many disadvantages. We're so far back from the conductor. So right. We have to anticipate so much while having an integral part. Mm-hmm. So we're always really, really on, well, I say on top of the stick, I think. Right, and the other thing is playing comfortably and with a rich, full sound. Mm-hmm. I think once you do that as a bass section, it makes the rest of the string section really comfortable. They can actually kind of lay back, like lay into a carpet of sound. So, I mean, I think you combine those two responsibilities, and that's kind of what it's like. Really being like right there with the conductor, but also being able to provide that warmth of sound for the rest of the whole orchestra.
Right, right. Yeah. So what's it like working with so many different conductors? I mean, are there points where, I always wonder if there's like points where there's artistic differences, or you see what someone's trying to get at and you're like, huh, how do we do that? Or, you know, I think there's a relationship between conductors and orchestras, and I think every orchestra navigates that differently. I'm just fascinated what that dynamic is.
That is very true. Every orchestra does kind of have its own response to a conductor. I'll say with Philly, it's neat playing in Philadelphia because some conductors like to explain everything and explain like exactly how they want to go. In Philadelphia, it's a lot just, if you show us, the orchestra will go. It will go in that direction. It's unbelievably nimble. Yannick even talks about that, and he keeps us on our toes because in a concert, he'll throw curveballs kind of all the time.
That's fun.
And if you aren't with him, it will be bad news bears if you aren't completely with him and with the stick. So to be able to show that expression, I mean, this is like with Philly. That's probably one of the to be able to express with the hands, which is why, I mean, I dabbled. So the funny thing is, you might remember this. We haven't spoken about this in a long time, but I was in your intro, your elements of conducting class. That's what it is. I remember. 8:30 in the morning. I know everyone's like, well, she's younger than you, right? And she is. She is. She is. But yeah, we because we actually were at school together, but then you're also teaching at the same time, which was very, very cool. But anyway, but being a conductor, now having that experience, I have a sense of what that is, and I wish I could do it. I just can't. I think I'm really, really bad, and my students just simply tolerate me. They're very nice.
I would beg to differ, and I want to come back to that. But before we get to that, what's it like to sit in a section with your teacher? Because I think a lot of people have that experience. So what's that relationship like? And I know you've known Hal for years, and yeah, what's that like?
And sharing stands for the last 4 years. It's weird. It is very strange because there's a part of me that still thinks of Hal as my teacher. I don't know if that will ever go away. I will say the shock of him being my teacher and sitting next to him, that has worn them down. And we are definitely collegial, and he respects things I do. Of course, I've always respected things that he does, and it's very collegial. But like it may have confused me in rehearsal every once in a while. It's like, so what do you think about that? Like, what do you mean? What do I think about that? Like, you have all the answers. I'm not supposed to have an opinion. So that's been great. It can be intimidating, but it's been wonderful to. I mean, speaking very personally, it's when you go through that experience of being in school and watching the orchestra, it's so funny. As I have memories of watching the orchestra as a student, I almost have more memories of them at the academy than I do at the Kimmel Center.
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
Because that's where I first saw the orchestra. So that's still so visceral.
Yeah.
And now to be a part of that and to spend my whole career kind of seeing that as something I want to attain and work for, and now I'm sitting next to the person in that orchestra. With it's really overwhelming, and I might have been in the orchestra for 10 years, but I'm pinching myself every day that I'm still a member of the orchestra, because it's a dream come true, and it's you just don't. For me in my life, I don't go expecting those things. To me, life is a journey, and everyone's journey is different. And I am appreciative of any moment I have to be able to express myself along in that journey. And for anyone who's listening, I really feel like that's something that is really, really helpful. In my nonprofit work, I wrote the story once about goats, but I will not explain it because it's kind of weird. But it's all about this idea of trying to want something that someone else or something someone else has, and to the point that actually can take away your own joy and your own satisfaction, and it starts to eat at you. It can be very detrimental. And I feel like in all my instances, if I just accepted and just had gratitude of the ability to make music and to share it with others and to teach it to young people and not to always be thinking, I actually made the progression easier. Because I started off as a freelancer. I didn't start off with a job. I started off as a freelancer in Philly before I won my first job in Grand Rapids and Santa Fe Opera. And all those experiences I wouldn't change for the world. They were all fantastic. Santa Fe Opera, Grand Rapids Symphony, Atlanta. I learned so much. And now to be able to bring it full circle back home with the Philadelphia Orchestras is really great.
It's really extraordinary. So, I mean, this was sort of a dream of yours and one that came true, but I think you've always, as you were talking about, interested in so many other things and looking outside of your own personal experience and creating connection and joy there. And I always found that in you as a person. I'm wondering, were you always like this? Were you born this way? Did you sort of, that's a weird question, right? But like, did you come to some realizations later in life, or did you always want to sort of make impact outside of yourself? If that makes sense. If you speak to some of my close friends who've known me for a long time, they say it's always been there.
I feel like it's been more realized as an adult. But I mean, this is a neat topic to discuss, because my upbringing was probably a lot different from a lot of the traditional classical music player. As I said, I grew up very much in the church. We were at church like 7 days of the week. There's a lot of emphasis on community and service and helping others and working as a family and working as a team and just trying to make things better. And that's always been in my DNA. Couple that with curiosity. I like, particularly with social things, like just trying to find a solution. Like, how can we make something better? What's a social solution to making something better? I think you couple that with some of my, my dad. It's so funny. I rarely talk about my dad because I want to talk about my mom who got me started. But I think my dad's persistence and hardworking. It's funny. I visited home recently, and my dad is he helps out at the church all the time. And there was a younger guy goes, "Mr. Conyers, you still here? You're always working." And I was like, I hear that. That's why people tell me all the time. So I think it's kind of in my blood, but yeah, and I just kind of created this life around all of those things to try to get the most out of it.
So in that line, tell me about Project 440, which is
you
are founder, director. It sounds remarkable. So give us just everything. Tell me.
Sure. So, well, I always like to say Project 440 is a music organization that doesn't teach music. We use music as a tool or the lens through which to teach young people entrepreneurship, leadership, and service, as well as college and career preparedness. This is for high school students in the school district of Philadelphia via an after-school a delivery mechanism. We have 4 main programs. One is Instruments for Success, which is a college and career course. Doing Good is an entrepreneurial course, and it's not just entrepreneurship, but it's social entrepreneurship. So we get young people to really think about how they are and can be leaders in their communities. What are the strengths that they have that could take them kind of to the next level? And honestly, at the end of the day, what tools will they need to make impact in the world around them? And actually, they're tasked with putting together a project that then goes out into the community, and they serve the community, and we give them seed money for all that, and it's great. That's Doing Good. We have a college fair, which has quickly become one of the biggest of its kind, I'm happy to say. We're working on plans for the fall, because right now the fall is looking dubious for a fair with lots of people. But last year we had 50 schools in attendance right here in Philadelphia at the Kimmel Center, and over 300 participants all over the area. Some came away as far away as Connecticut to come to this fair. We have seminars and workshops that take place throughout the day. So it's not just you come and meet a school, but while you're there, you can go to a seminar on essay writing. You can go to a seminar on how to find scholarships, particularly in the Philadelphia area. This is a program that is for students in Philadelphia, and as I said, it's absolutely free of charge. And then we have our Youth Advisory Council. Our Youth Advisory Council is an advocacy group both for Project 440 and music education in the city of Philadelphia. They act as leaders. They learn to work as a board. They, as a matter of fact, where the president of the Youth Advisory Council actually be at the adult board meeting on in June or later this month. Yeah, and what the students are doing, it's really great. I mean, some of the students who graduated from the program have continued their work. One, they completely became fiscally sponsored and put together their own board, and they're going into schools teaching young people about classical music, middle and elementary schools, and creating partnerships, and we're giving them gigs. It's great with how we can empower young people to use their gift for good. And it teaches them that, I mean, I'll just be blunt. There's more to life than just playing your instrument all the time. There is. I love music to the innermost depths of my soul. Like it is like everything to me. But after a while, and as we get older, and I know it's hard for young people to even imagine this, but as we get older, it like on a Saturday morning, sometimes I'd rather sleep in than go and play a kid's concert. So in that way, it's a job. And it's so funny. I talk to young people, and they're like, "No, say it ain't so." But it's I think finding that thing that really does fuel you. There will be your music, but is it always just the music? And if you land in an orchestra, if you land in an orchestra, and so I'm just seeing some comments from some friends. If you land in an orchestra, that's what you'll be doing. And is that all you really want to be doing? And what I mean by that is I know, and I'm not speaking for any orchestra, this could be anywhere, but I know people in the orchestral field who are miserable in their job because they never found the thing that actually made them happy. And to be able to find that at a young age, to be able to find purpose in everything instead of just performance, but purpose in performance, if you will, I think makes a big difference. And I think as more young people think about this going into the field, it could really have create a huge seismic shift in how orchestras function, not only on the stage, but in their communities as well. Yeah.
But that requires those young people to have those experiences and to have these programs like Project 440. I'm actually interested in Inception because it's such a comprehensive organization with so many, programs. So is this a skill that you learned? Did you put this all together? Because that goes to social entrepreneurship and what you're sort of paying for now, but did you have the experience of doing anything like this, or was this an idea that just came to fruition all of a sudden?
So it may have been a little bit in my DNA. I'll say when I was young and in high school, I never worked for two reasons. One, my parents didn't necessarily want us working like an hourly job because they thought they were supposed to provide for us. They didn't want us. They want us to be able to concentrate on our studies and
Right.
But as we got older, we put groups together in Savannah as high school students, and you can make decent money playing for weddings. You just put a little wedding book together, and if you sound good,
Yeah.
you can just show up and play these weddings. And we played at a fort once for an outdoor wedding, and different churches and stuff. But being entrepreneurial in that way, then you actually start to really maximize your time, because instead of working so many hours, I could do this one gig, have some money in my pocket, and then also continue to study. So for me, it was almost being efficient with my time and money. And that's what I tell young people all the time. They're like, I don't know what to do. I just graduated. What was me? It's like, look, you just got to spend 4 years having someone tell you how to play this instrument. I'll use Marquise, for example. He's watching. Like a clarinet. So you have this clarinet, and you can you've learned all these skills with it. And they're young people who want to learn. It could be at a community center, or it could be at a music store, or you can create something where it's needed. So there are ways we can advertise ourselves and get ourselves out there, but we have to put the work in it.
Right,
we have to put the effort into it. It's not like you graduate and you're like, okay, this is what I'm owed because I worked so hard. Don't get me started on that. Down that path, because it's I think that ends up being detrimental, and I think people just sell themselves too short and then get mad at the world because they weren't thinking entrepreneurially. So like one of the things I tell our students is, like, when you're in high school and you go to college, that first day you are in that first day of your freshman year, you need to be thinking about the last day of your senior year immediately. Like, don't let that time pass. Oh, I'm gonna have fun. I'm gonna have a party. Like, you can do it, but it will come back. It will come back to haunt you. So one of my sayings is that, like, work now, have fun later.
Wise words, though, you know?
Yeah.
But I love that sense of advocacy for yourself and having a view towards the future, and not just playing the instrument, but what it means to make music rather than what music inherently means. Even though it's wonderful and, you know, it moves us and all those things, but using, as you said, as a tool, I think that's really remarkable, and something that probably a lot of teachers and educators don't necessarily focus on. And especially in, I would say, conservatory training, it's probably all about, you know, this is how you hold your bow, and here's the best fingering for this, and this is the great sound, and you probably don't get so much of that. So I think this is really remarkable what you're creating at the high school level, which I think is really, really cool.
Thanks. And I mean, it was definitely a transition. We started in Savannah filling in a gap by the absence of the orchestra, because Savannah Symphony, the orchestra I grew up, they filed Chapter 7 in 2003.
I remember that.
That was after the 9/11. That was the windfall from that, as a lot of arts organizations struggle. And we just wanted to fill a gap in music education left by the absence of the orchestra. And we just started with our friends. We put together this group. We were called Music Alive at the time, and we'd go to Savannah for like 2 weeks. And it was so much work, Sarah. It was so much work, but it was so much fun. Like, we would play 4 shows in a day and then hang out at night. And and honestly, Sarah, I was taking the Curtis motto of learning by doing. That's what we did, because we had no idea what we were doing. I was starting a nonprofit. I still don't know what I'm doing. My degree says I play the bass. And that's kind of where it stops. So, but literally just figuring it out, I was like, oh, how to put together a budget, how to take care of your artists when they're there, how to make sure we have an agenda and a plan and the timelines, and take care of all the travel and all the different elements. And if you learn to do that stuff, it can really come in handy. And then when I moved to Philadelphia, that's when we shifted our focus from doing that work to training young musicians in that entrepreneurship mindset, in college and career preparedness. And I'll say over 6 years of trial and error. We worked with the school district looking for different partnerships, just trying to find our niche. But I'll say about 2 years ago, we found exactly our stride with the development of these programs, and that's what we champion today.
And I love the idea that was a work in progress until you found that, you know, that the really the equation that worked for you within your community. And to say that, you know, you stuck to this and sort of figured out what your niche was, I think is sort of remarkable as well, because I think a lot of people would say, well, it's not working or it feels uncomfortable, you know, I'm going to back out of it, or maybe this is not for me, rather than saying, so how can we shift, move, change, and become what we want to be?
Yeah. Yeah, I read a book when I first started all this stuff. I mean, I got Nonprofit for Dummies from Barnes and Nobles. I didn't know what I was doing, but there was another book, and I wish I knew what it was, and I don't know if there's a way to figure it out, and maybe I'm making this up. But my memory is the first chapter. It was about nonprofits. It said, "Don't give up." That was the first sentence. I said, it sounds like you don't need to read the rest of the book, because that tells you almost everything. Right? Yep. And I have to remember that often, because it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have a question here that says, could you talk about music ensembles as training for teamwork, whether you're in music or business or other areas? Do you think that this whole sense of playing together, literally playing together well as musicians, feeds into the teamwork that you might want in a different field? Sure.
So I think musicians, particularly when you get a lot of training over many years, we do develop our own superpowers, and we actually take them for granted. We learn how to compromise. We learn how to adjust. We learn how to follow leadership. We learn how to express things that we might want to say that we're in harsh disagreement, but in a diplomatic way to keep and I think when you start taking those qualities into the workplace, it puts us way above a lot of people. I think our expectations are higher, because if something goes wrong, we're trained, well, what do we do to make it better?
Right.
How do we make it better? And I don't think that's innate in a lot of people, and because it's been, I mean, for lack of a better term, beat down into us for so long,
right.
It just really does become part of our nature. So and to the point where you know, I'm sure this has happened in Minnesota. Well, I'm sure. Well, I don't know. There were works in Atlanta. This definitely happened. They would actually, corporations would come to the Atlanta Symphony, and there would be a guest conductor who knew how to host the whole thing. But they would bring a firm, like a high-powered firm or corporation, and their execs would be scattered in the orchestra, and they would actually watch us rehearse. Sitting in the orchestra and how we communicate and how the conductor communicates with us, and it was actually training for these business execs about how does a symphony orchestra function, because in reality, a symphony orchestra shouldn't function. You have 100 people with completely different ideas, playing many different instruments, all of a sudden playing at the same time and agreeing that this is what we're going to do, which is what any great corporation wants to be able to do. So yeah, I think the skills that musicians learn are definitely transferable to so many different areas of life.
Right.
Yeah, outside of music.
That's interesting you brought that up. I do actually a presentation called The Art of Conducting, and I've done that for a lot of organizations to show really how a conductor's role is to have a vision, as in a CEO, you know, create this sense of community, a buy-in to the vision, a way to progress towards this goal together. So it's all those things, and I've actually done that program, just like, you know, Atlanta Symphony for various corporations. I think it's important, and it is a really tangible connection between music and other disciplines and other areas of life, which is, I think, important, because we need to make these connections, and for us not to live in a bubble. So speaking of not living in a bubble, these last 10 days have been just full of pain and outrage and challenging for this entire country. And I was really moved by your response, and you wrote a letter to the students of Project 440. Can I just sort of read a couple things that?
Yeah, sure.
You were talking about social media and how you don't want to make statements there, and you said, rather, my statements instead are lived daily. Action is how I respond to adversity, which I really love, because that essentially is how we respond to the world, is how we show ourselves to the world, is through our actions. Let me read a couple more things, and then I'll let you sort of come back to that. As a Black man, I've had my share of experiences that have upset me, and a few that have scared me a bit too. While you may not have seen me protesting in the streets, I've been actively protesting for years. The sign I carry is the color of my skin, and my message to the world has been my advocacy for you. When feeling powerless to make change in the world, start by sowing your own seeds of goodness for the future. I love all those things. Can you explain a little more?
Sure. I mean, and there's a part of there where I talk about people respond to trauma differently. And let me preface this by, because I saw at least one of my students on here. I was trying to be open to my students during all of this. To be honest, I've been super busy, and it's been craziness on top of craziness, on top of craziness, so many different levels. But then it came to the point where it was decided that my students wanted to speak to me, and in speaking to them, I learned that they wanted to hear from me. And hear from me, and so I was inspired by my students. I literally had a meeting on Monday night, and I wrote it after that meeting. That's what came of it. I think, I mean, there's so many different layers. In that moment, I had a discovery that they are half my age, which is hard to even begin
Let's not
to
think about that, but yeah.
And that a lot of their world is this world, social media. And I think I'm not there yet. Most of my life was lived in a world that didn't have social media. And so I don't feel any kind of pressure or to be out there in that way for all kinds of reasons. One, it's just not innate in me. Two, I'm like, well, people don't need to know my business. Like, but literally, that's how I feel. Because
no, yeah, okay.
Well, and that's why I've tried to create platforms that are positive, that talk about things that might encourage people, and show even some of my vulnerabilities by doing these my little practice videos and that kind of thing, and being available in that way. I think I learned a lot of things from my students. One is the medium is kind of almost whether I like it or not might be something I have to just embrace more, particularly in times like this, particularly in this world. But two, that having a voice is important, and being able to express these things, particularly because it's really weird to even say it out loud, but they're like we look up to you and we want to know what you think and we want to know how you respond. So that's all that one part. I think the middle part about my experiences, well, first going to the trauma part first. Everyone responds differently, and people are responding differently to this, and I want to acknowledge that, because people shouldn't be shamed, because this is scary for a lot of people. Because I know there's a lot of talk about silence being complicit. I think sometimes people might need a moment to just take it in, because trauma is different for everyone, and I want to recognize that. But then there is action, and there are actionable steps that come after that. So, and I want to relate to my students because I am a person of color. I'm a Black man, and I'm in classical music. And they probably have interests like, has anything ever happened to Mr. Conyers? And there have been things that have been not great. I tend to be a glass half full guy, one. So those things normally don't actually bother me that much. Two, maybe I'm too much of a realist, because I almost see this is kind of the way the world has always had these injustices since the beginning of time. And I don't have control. We strive for, as a country, for this kind of perfect thing where everyone is equal. And we have not reached that yet, but we should keep working for it. But I accept that, but honestly, inside of me, that fuels me to go forward. And that goes to the end of the letter. Work, practice, like put your heart into it. Don't feel strange. Don't feel like you're alone on the stage. Like, pick your spot and own it.
Right.
Let your voice be your instrument. Let music be your inspiration, because these are things that will fuel us. We talked about fuel earlier, but these are things that will fuel us to take us to hopefully a place where we feel comfortable in some uncomfortable spaces. It will take us to a place where we aren't so upset that we just want to give up. And if you give it back, that was another part of the letter. If you give it back, it actually inspires you to want to keep giving. So my students, with the work they're doing and their advocacy, actually inspires me to keep working and working harder every day. So, yeah.
And I'm sure they're tremendously inspired by you. And I love this idea of, self-advocacy, self-empowerment, really finding your voice and finding yourself through giving, and how that comes back to you and then creates this sort of wonderful circle, which is the basis of community and civilization and all those things. But, you know, so as a larger question then, especially given what's going on now, but, you know, also within the pandemic and how the world has changed in some ways, what is the role of a musician or artist in the world today as it stands? And it's a really big question, so, you know.
No, it's great. It's great. I again, taking the music out of the concert hall. We've been very fortunate. I think if you look at a lot of the rest of the world, they're almost forced to be part of the rest of the world. Whereas in the art profession, we are not forced to be part of the rest of the world. Our world lies in a very small room where we spend many hours a day. And then it might go to a larger room, but it's a room nonetheless where we spend many hours a day. And that's kind of where the song ends, generally.
Right.
Now, there are many efforts to where that's changing, but to the point of my own nonprofit, using music as a tool to have some of these tough conversations. That's what art is about. I mean, that's what it's the fact that we could bring different parts of the community together, and through I'll be a little cliche-ish, but to use the healing power of music to literally bring community and start dialogue, like real dialogue. I think most of us are afraid of that. I mean, or even if we aren't afraid of it, our institutions are.
Yes.
They don't want to be in a place where, oh, that's controversial, or, oh, we can't do this, and oh, we can't say this. And but I think we're supposed to. Most of our favorite composers are disruptors.
Right.
Beethoven, the first chord of his first symphony was disruptive.
Right. A second chord, right?
That's right. Shostakovich, these are a disruptor. The French guys, Ravel and Debussy, disruptors. And these are the guys. It's so funny. I mean, even just making this up on the spot, but these are the guys we remember in history. So what role taking out, and those are the roles they played in Stravinsky. Yes, that's another one, a great disruptor. So how does that look like as an orchestra and as an institution? And how can we be disruptors in the most positive of ways? Not in the Beethoven music didn't hurt anybody.
Right.
Shostakovich's music, it may have made people think. It may have made people reflect. And once we start to have those conversations, it might actually start to bring people together. So for me, that is what our role is in as musicians. And I wear it, it's almost like a badge of honor. It's like, because like, to me, I'll be honest, I'm speaking to you, so I'm not under any auspice. My instrument, it's like pointless. If I'm just playing notes all the time, that's pointless. It really is. It's no different from it's just like kind of mindless plugging in. But two things. One, the joy and the miracle of being on the stage and bringing these great works to life. And then being able to take that same visceral joy, that same experience of working together, that same idea of having nothing and creating the most beautiful thing and translating that to the rest of the world. To me, it's just one of the most impactful and powerful things we can do as musicians. But it means we have to be adamant, and not adamant about being out, not just being in our own world, because it's so easy to be there.
Yes.
And it's comfortable to be there. I mean, you can take that to what's going on in the world today. Like, a lot of people just got comfortable and have said, oh, well, there's not something I have to worry about, so I'll just show up to work and go home. But that's the silence that has hurt many people for generations. And I feel like that's how we can be advocates in the world. We can't be silent as musicians. And again, it's not like we're going out and saying all these things. It's like we're leading by example through the wonderful work that we do, and be an example to the world of what the world can be. Yeah.
Wow. That's a statement. I love that. I mean, it needs to be sort of written down and, put on CNN, because that really encapsulates for me what music can do, what it means to be a human, giving to, being a participant of larger society in the world, and being a human being. And I love that. So last question for you. So On your deathbed, that doesn't
Ooh.
sound great, but what are the, like, sort of, can you identify the one or two things you want to be able to reflect back on and say, that meant something to me, to my students, the community? You know, what is that last, what's going to be meaningful to you at the end of everything?
Sure.
That's a big question, but
Yeah, no. It's good. I mean, I think it comes down to how, I mean, really, I'm trying to figure out how I can put it into a sentence, but how many people was I able to help along the way? That's it.
and that's it.
That really is it. I mean, I gave the closing keynote at Sphinx, and one of my students actually got to the microphone and said, "Mr. Conyers, why didn't you give up on us? Like we were, we weren't." She basically saying we weren't the nicest or blah blah blah, but you never gave up on us. And but she says, "I understand," and then she was thanking me like, what? And like to me, that's everything, because that to me means I made a difference. And with all the institutions that I'm part of, and everything that I do in life, is how can I be a difference for someone? Because I've said this before, and I hinted at this even in the letter. There have been many people who've gone on before us who have sacrificed so that I could be where I am today. And some of them died to be where I am so I could be where I am today. And I feel like I owe it to them to fulfill their promise, because I'm in many ways living their dream that they never got to see. And by paying it forward, if you will, I'm able to do that for others. And that's to me going to be, it's not going to be about bass playing. Some people might think it's not about bass playing. Bass playing is something I love it, but for me, it's not about bass playing. It really is how did I use the bass again to help others? And in teaching lessons, it could be the journey of learning with a student, and that could be transformative. So I do it with the bass in hand, but the larger picture is they know how to navigate life. Yeah.
Well, Joe, thank you for making a difference to so many already, and continuing to do so. And I have to say, I've known you for maybe 20 years.
Yeah, it is 20 years.
Your positive spirit and your outlook on life has always been, I think, inspiring to people, inspiring to me. And I love to see that. I knew you as a teenager, and
you did.
And that energy for life is very much there. And actually, you have even more. And I think that's an important message to musicians and the world, and to really keep that with you, because I think you're remarkable. And thank you.
That's very sweet, Sarah. That's very, very sweet. And thanks for having me on and having this conversation. And you be safe. It's really funny. I knew you were in Minneapolis, but to me, that's such a, are you in Minneapolis now?
No, I live in San Francisco, so yeah.
Oh, you're in San Francisco. Okay. All right.
But yeah.
Okay.
But yeah.
So you aren't, okay. So okay, that's right. We did talk about that.
Yeah.
Well, you be safe where you are, and
well.
Thanks for being this mouthpiece for so many, in the world, and allowing us different people to use this platform to inspire others.
Thanks so much,
great.
Joe. It's been great having you. To everyone, we'll see you next week. We're being joined by an astronaut next week. So
that's cool.
Diversion from music. Astronaut Nicole Stott, who's also an artist. So look forward to that. Thank you, Joe. And,
my pleasure.
Safe and healthy and all that, and sending love. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Same to you. Bye.